Hello, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast, a show hosted by me, Veronica Kokis, holistic voice teacher and singer just like you. Grab a cup of tea, relax, and sit back as we discuss all things singing technique, mindset tips, and more so you can show up as the most confident and creative singer you can be. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast. Now, you may be wondering, who are you? What am I doing here? What is this show about? So this episode is going to be a little bit about that, what I'm going to be talking about on some of these episodes. And I'm also going to be sharing a lot about my own story as a singer, kind of how I got started, just some of the mountains and valleys that I've kind of been through as a singer. I'm also going to be giving you guys some homework in this episode. Now you may be like, homework? I didn't sign up for that. Well, I'm giving you guys homework just like I give any of my other students homework. And of course, if you're in my studio, if you're a student of mine, you know that homework is always optional. I kind of give my students directions at the end of each lesson, I recap what it is that we covered and I give them some assignments. But as always, just as if you're putting work into your singing, if you're taking lessons, if you're interested in improving your voice, you know that what you put into it, you get out of it. And so with this episode, like I said, I'm going to be digging into what we're doing here, my own story. And at the end, you're going to be getting a little bit of homework that will help you grow as a singer, identifying your values and what's important to you. So let's go ahead and dive in just a little bit about me and what this show is about. So I am actually a holistic voice teacher, which sometimes people are like, holistic, what are you talking about? And some people think, holistic, a little far out. Maybe she's a little far out there. And to be honest, I'm an Aquarius. So of course, all of us Aquarians, shout out to my Aquarians out there. All of us kind of got a little bit of that wacky side. I'm a little far out woo-woo into my crystals and my astrology. But that is not what I'm here to talk about. When I talk about holistic, me being a holistic voice teacher, that means that I'm not only concerned with what's happening physically when my students are singing, but I'm also asking them, what is going through your mind? What was going through your mind when you sang through that phrase just now? How are you feeling emotionally? Digging into beyond what's going on physically and addressing, issues at the root. So when I say I'm a holistic voice teacher, that's what I am talking about. And in this podcast, I'm going to be, switching it up each week. Some weeks I'm going to be talking about just some different vocal techniques, going through some exercises. So there will be exercises that I'm going to do that you guys can take away from this podcast. I'm also going to be giving you a bit of the holistic side of things, because like I said, singing is more than the physical. And I love doing meditations in lessons with my students. So some days there might be a meditation episode that'll be targeted and directed to you, the singer, to help you kind of work through some of the mindset things that might be going on for you. And then some weeks I may just talk about other sort of mindset things, talking about things kind of that are going on in the musical world, talking about my opinions on the recording industry, talking about my opinions on classical music. I mean, I love listening to podcasts, and I was thinking that this podcast could kind of just be a smorgasbord of everything that I'm really passionate about as a singer. The reason why I called this show No Wrong Notes is because I want you guys to feel really welcome here. I want all singers to feel really welcome in my studio, and I want my listeners to feel really welcome here. One of the big things that I'm passionate about as a teacher, and something I'm working on in myself, is being compassionate with myself when it comes to my singing, when it comes to my teaching, encouraging my students to be compassionate with themselves. So that's why this is called the No Wrong Notes podcast, because there are no wrong notes, y'all. There are no mistakes. I mean, well, we make mistakes sometimes when we sing, but mistakes are not anything to be ashamed of. In fact, they're things that we can learn from and embrace. So that is why we are calling this the No Wrong Notes podcast. So we're going to dive into today's topic. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my story as a singer and as a teacher. And perhaps you can find some things to relate to in my story. I'm not just sharing my story because I love to hear myself talk about it. No, okay? I'm really just sharing this so you can maybe find some common ground, because I think a lot of times as singers and as people, we can feel really alone in our struggles. Maybe in some of my struggles, you can kind of relate to some of that. So, starting just really at the beginning here. Some people know this, especially if you went to college with me. You know that my mom was actually my music teacher in elementary school. She was also my middle school choir director and my high school choir director. And if you didn't know that already and you're like, well, how does that happen? It just so happened that she started out as my elementary music teacher, and then she was getting promoted and things like that. So her promotions just lined up with me moving through these different grades. And it was an interesting and, at times fun experience. I think that my mom really played a huge role in me becoming really passionate about singing. I felt like I was encouraged by her to sing and make music, and I really appreciate that. However, though, I do feel like from a young age, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to be perfect and successful, and that carried over into singing in choir, into singing solo stuff. I mean, my mom can tell you, anybody I went to high school with can tell you, I put so much pressure on myself. There was one moment my senior year where I had a literal panic attack because I was under so much anxiety and stress, a lot of it self-induced and self-imposed. So that was kind of a common thread growing up. And a big relief from some of that pressure and perfectionism, I think, really came through in my voice lessons with my first voice teacher. She really encouraged me to be creative and choosing music I liked. And the thing about her, too, was that even when I would make mistakes, or maybe I didn't get to go to all-state choir or anything like that, that she was still really, really supportive. And I think it's really important to have people in your life, especially as a child or growing up as a teenager, that really support and encourage your creativity. She really encouraged me to believe that there was a place for my voice out there. And she also taught me that not everybody would like my voice, and that was okay. Everybody's obviously got an idea of what good singing is, but I felt like she made me feel that there was still a place for me, which is why I was so inspired by her to go on to study music in college. So going to Texas State University, eat 'em up cats. It was a lot of fun. So she inspired me to go off to college and pursue music. And originally, I had majored in music education. I thought I was going to be teaching in the classroom, directing high school choirs, things like that. But I felt like my voice teacher in college, he really, really showed me that singing is more than just sounding good. It's about really putting on a performance, really connecting with your music on an emotional level. And he taught me really how to show up creatively on stage. He encouraged me to be more expressive, and I felt like I truly was able to become an artist during that time. There were still moments in my singing where there were kind of issues and things like that. But I don't know. He really gave me a lot of inspiration and really motivated me to keep maybe pursuing this path in performance. Because I got to be honest, you guys, like any of my friends from Texas State will tell you that I probably switched my idea of what I would do, like for a job beyond college. I probably switched my goal like 5 times. First I wanted to be a choir director. Then I switched majors to become a vocal performance major. And I was like, I'm going to be an opera singer. And then I had actually worked at the Texas State Capitol doing like admin stuff for different senators and things like that. And I was inspired by that. And I was like, I'm going to become a lawyer. And even got so far as to begin studying for the LSAT. And then I was studying for the LSAT, and I was looking at these questions, and I was like, yeah, I don't think this is for me. And so, and by the time I got to my senior year of college, I was really not ready to give up music. I just I really loved the music I was singing at the time. I loved performing on stage, doing operas, all of that stuff. And so my voice teacher at that time and my experiences with the opera program at Texas State were really, really good ones, to where they pushed me and encouraged me to keep pursuing singing beyond undergrad, beyond, my first 4 years of college. So I went off to grad school, going off to George Mason University. Go Patriots. I think that's what you say. You guys, I went there for 2 years, and TBH, I loved George Mason, loved my voice teacher there. I loved the music department. Don't really know that much about the school spirit part of things for GMU. And I'm so sorry, you guys, anybody who knows me from GMU. But I got there, and man, my voice teacher at the time, she is amazing. Like, if you ever have the opportunity to study with Professor Patricia Miller, take it. She will make you work, but I swear to God, I feel like that woman showed me how to sing. Like, everything just technically flawless. Oh my God. And I really felt empowered by that. I feel like she really whipped me into shape, bam, feeling really good and confident in my singing, because it really felt sustainable. I was doing things with my voice that I had struggled with a lot before, and she really empowered me in those years of studying with her. But by the end, through no fault of my teacher or the program, I really was starting to feel burnt out by classical music. I felt like, again, there was that thread of just perfectionism, of needing to push myself, needing to be the best, that had really burned me out. And like I said, a lot of that was just self-imposed through no fault of my teacher or the program or anything like that. Just feeling very burnt out, and I was kind of lost on what to do. And at that time, I had just gotten a job teaching voice. And so I really spent the next couple years, and I've really spent the past 5 years, really figuring out who I am, who am I as a singer, what do I value? What do I want to do with my music, with my singing? Because I have all these skills, what am I doing with them? And I discovered through that process that I really value compassion, creativity, and curiosity, which is what I try to share in my singing and with my students. I really got into singing in contemporary styles. So I still sing a little bit of classical music. I enjoy practicing it and singing through arias and art songs and things like that. But I'm doing it more to kind of get back into the joy of it, rather than me pursuing any sort of professional roles or anything like that. I feel like the operatic world and just the classical voice world can be, it's extremely competitive, you guys, especially for sopranos. There really aren't a lot of jobs out there for any of us, but especially with just the amount of singers there are out there, but especially for sopranos, there are a million bajillion sopranos out there, you guys, and I see that, and I am not willing to force myself to be a perfectionist and seek out that perfection in my career, and pushing myself past what my mind and body can do. I feel like really dedicating yourself to a life in classical singing and opera, it takes a lot out of you. And I would love to maybe have one of my friends on here one day who is in the field and who is performing still, which is awesome. I would love to have one of them maybe on here in the future to kind of talk about just how much it really takes to perform and be a singer. Being an opera singer really takes a lot out of you. And so I recognized that. And like I said, spent the last 5 years really digging into contemporary styles, learning how to sing and teach pop music, rock music, musical theater. And if I'm being honest, guys, pop, rock, and musical theater, that was my first love. I used to love putting on my little radio, my little boombox in my room growing up, and just putting on the radio and singing along and dancing along to that music. And so that's really what I've been spending time doing, getting into that, learning how to sing and belt sustainably, which is something I really enjoy working on with my own students. Like I said, when it comes to me finding myself, finding what my artistry looks like, who am I as a singer, that really involved understanding what I value, and just breaking that down a little bit, like what that looks like. It looks like me sitting down and figuring out what's important to me, what lights me up, those sorts of questions, and really being honest with myself on the answers to those questions to really identify my values. Because I think that when we live our life in alignment with what we value and what we care about, we're going to be much happier than if we're trying to follow someone else's values, following someone else's timeline for life. Because you only have this one life. When this is over, when this is all over, guys, it's done, okay? So you might as well live a life that you feel really inspired and empowered by. So as I said, I really value compassion, creativity, and curiosity. What that might look like is that it looks like following my curiosity, learning how to sing and teach non-classical styles, and even working on my yoga teacher certification so I can maybe bring that holistic voice lesson to a whole nother level. It also involves being creative and working on my own songwriting and being compassionate with myself when I make mistakes. So as I mentioned at the top of the episode, I mentioned that there would be homework at the end. So here we are, you guys. And like I said, you do not have to do this. You do not have to sit down and think about these things. This is just for the people that maybe want to dig a little bit deeper into what they value as people and as singers. And so what we're going to be talking about here is we're going to be going into some questions to figure out who you might be as a singer or artist. You can write these questions down. You can go off and, write them down in your notes app or write it down on a piece of paper and then spend time thinking about these questions. And like I said, you don't even have to do these questions. So it's just to give you guys even more resources to empower you. My first question is, think about what lights you up. What lights you up? Does singing a certain style of music light you up? Writing your own songs? Feeling at home on stage? What is it? That is the first question. What lights you up? For me personally, it's teaching. I love teaching. I love just kind of like being present with my students and moving through each moment and figuring out what the moment calls for. So, off to our next question. Think about what drains you as a singer. What drains you? Maybe it's singing music you don't love, working with teachers or groups that are toxic, that really make you feel icky when you've been working with them. So what drains you as a singer? Our next question is, think of your ideal singing scenario. Maybe you're on stage, maybe you're singing for friends and family at karaoke night. What does it feel and sound like? Maybe you feel confident and don't care what people think. You feel creative and come alive on stage. What is it? Really visualizing that scenario and understanding what you're feeling and experiencing in that scenario. Going forward and kind of, going off of the previous question, what feelings are present in your ideal singing scenario? Do you feel confident, creative, or curious? Those feelings, my friend, are indicative of what you value. And honestly, out of all the questions, this would probably be one of the most important. So really hone in on that. Next little task, because it is more of a task than a question. Think of one thing you can do this week, however big or small, that will help you feel and live your singing values on a more regular basis. So maybe if you're someone that really wants to feel confident singing in front of friends and family at karaoke night, what is something you could do this week to move closer to that goal? Maybe it's getting in for a voice lesson with a voice teacher like myself. You can drop on in. I can put the link here in the show notes. Or maybe, can't afford lessons at the moment. Totally understand that. You could maybe perhaps look around on YouTube, look around on social media. There are so many resources out there, you guys, that you can turn to now for singing advice, for singing tips on TikTok, on Instagram, YouTube. Whatever you're looking for when it comes to wanting to feel more confident singing in front of your friends and family, there's a piece of content out there for you. So again, thinking about something you can do this week to move closer to the way you want to feel in your ideal scenario. And here's the thing, identifying your singing values through asking yourself these questions is only part of the battle. Because the deal is that most likely you've got some blocks or some little, thought patterns that are keeping you from living those values. In a later episode, we'll discuss how to work through those blocks. So, like I said at the beginning there would be homework, and I like to kind of wrap up each lesson here, or each lesson with my students. In each voice lesson, I like to ask the student, what do you feel is one big thing you can do this week? And so they'll say, oh, maybe I'll practice working on that belting exercise we did or something. So your big thing this week is that I challenge you to ask yourself these questions related to defining your values so you can really get clear on what it is that you want to do with your singing. All right, guys, that wraps up our first episode of No Wrong Notes. If you enjoyed it, give me a rating or go ahead and rate the podcast. Leave us a review. And you can also find us on Instagram, on TikTok. On Instagram, we are at VEROSE Music. So it's Verose Music. And then on TikTok, we're at Sing with Vero. VERO. So give us a follow there. And until next time, happy singing, y'all.